Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Om Apavitra Pavitro Va Sarva Avastangatopi Va Yat Smaret Pundarik Akshang Sabaya Abhyantara Shuchihi Sri Vishnu, Sri Vishnu, Sri Vishnu Om Ajnana Timarandhasya Jnana Anjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Trinadapi Sunichena Tarar Iva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Hare Nama Hare Nama Hare Nama Eva Kevalam Kalau Nastyeva 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 Gatir Anyata Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we start a new section. We are going to cover 3 chapters, chapter 82, 83, and 84. And this episode is all about how the residents of Dwaraka and the residents of Vrindavan met at Kurukshetra. Let us begin. Chapter 82 is entitled Krishna and Balaram Meet the Inhabitants of Vrindavan. So here is the chapter summary as it is contained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. This chapter describes how the Yadavas and many other kings met at Kurukshetra during a solar eclipse and discussed topics concerning Lord Krishna. It also relates how Krishna met Nanda Maharaj and the other residents of Vrindavan at Kurukshetra, giving them great joy. Hearing that a total eclipse of the sun was soon to occur, people from all over Bharatavarsha, including the Yadavas, converged at Kurukshetra in order to earn special pious credit. After the Yadus had bathed and performed other obligatory rituals, they noticed that kings of the Matsya, Ushinara, and other places had also come, as well as Nanda Maharaj and the cowherder community of Raja, and they were always feeling intense anxiety of separation from Krishna. The Yadavas, overjoyed to see all these old friends, embraced them one by one as they shed tears of happiness. The wives also embraced one another with great pleasure. When Queen Kunti saw her brother Vasudev and other members of her family, Kunti Dev put aside her sorrow. Yet Kunti still said to Vasudev, "O brother, I am so unfortunate because all of you forgot me during my tribulations. Alas, even one's relatives forget a person who providence no longer favors. Vasudeva then replied, "Oh, my dear sister, every one of us is merely a plaything of fate. We Yadavas were so harassed by Kamsa that we were forced to scatter and take shelter in foreign lands. And so there was no way for us to keep in touch with you." The kings present were struck with wonder upon beholding Lord Sri Krishna and his wives. And the kings began to glorify the Yadavas for having gotten Krishna's personal association. Seeing Nanda Maharaj, the Yadavas were delighted, and each of them embraced Nanda tightly. Vasudeva also embraced Nanda with great joy, remembering how, when Vasudeva was tormented by Kamsa, Nanda had taken Vasudeva's sons, Krishna and Balaram, under his protection. Balaram and Krishna embraced and bowed down to Mother Yashoda, but their throats choked up with emotion, and Balaram and Krishna could say nothing to Yashoda Mata. Nanda and Yashoda lifted their two sons onto their laps and embraced them, and in this way relieved their distress of separation. Rohini and Devaki both embraced Yashoda, and remembering the great friendship Yashoda had shown them, Rohini and Devaki told Yashoda that the kindness she had done by raising and supporting Krishna and Balaram could not be repaid even with the wealth of Indradeva. Then the Supreme Lord Krishna approached the young cowherder gopi girls in a secluded place. Krishna consoled the gopis by pointing out that Krishna is all-pervasive, being the source of all energies. And thus Krishna implied that the gopis could never really be separated from Krishna. Having been at long last reunited with Krishna, the gopis prayed simply to have Krishna's lotus feet manifest in their hearts. So the next chapter is chapter 83, entitled Draupadi Meets the Queens of Krishna. This chapter relates a conversation between Draupadi and Lord Krishna's foremost queens, in which each of the queens describes how Krishna married her. Lord Sri Krishna returned from his meeting with the gopis and asked King Yudhishthir and his other relatives whether they were well, and they replied, "My lord, anyone who has just once imbibed through his or her ears the honey of your pastimes can never know misfortune." Then Draupadi inquired from Lord Krishna's wives how Krishna had come to marry them. Queen Rukmani spoke first. "Many kings headed by Jarasandha were intent on giving me in marriage to Shishupal. Then at my wedding, they all stood with bows in hand, ready to support Shishupal against any opponent. But Sri Krishna came and forcibly took me away, just as a lion takes its prey from amidst goats and sheep." Then Queen Satyabhama spoke. "When my uncle Prasena was killed, my father Satyajit falsely accused Krishna of murder. To clear his name, Krishna defeated Jambavan, recovered the Syamantaka jewel, and returned it to Satyajit. Repenting his mistakes and offenses, my father Satyajit presented Krishna with both the jewel and myself. Then Queen Jambavati spoke. When Sri Krishna entered my father's cave in search of the Syamantaka jewel, at first Jambavan did not understand who Krishna was. So my father fought with Krishna for 27 days and nights. Finally, Jambavan could understand that Krishna was none other than Lord Ramachandra, his worshipable Lord. Thus, Jambavan gave Krishna the Syamantaka jewel along with me. Queen Kalindi spoke. To obtain Krishna as my husband, I performed severe austerities. Then one day, Lord Krishna came to me in the company of Arjuna, and at that time Krishna agreed to marry me. Then Queen Mitravinda spoke. Sri Krishna came to my Swayamvara ceremony, where Krishna defeated all the opposing kings and took me away to his capital city of Dwaraka. Then Queen Satya said, my father stipulated that to win my hand, a prospective suitor would have to subdue and tie up 7 powerful bulls. Accepting this challenge, Lord Krishna playfully subdued the 7 bulls, defeated all his rival suitors, and married me. Then Queen Bhadra spoke. My father invited his nephew Krishna, to whom I had already given my heart, and offered me to Krishna as his bride. The dowry was an entire military division and a retinue of my female companions. Queen Lakshmana then said to Draupadi, at my Swayamvara, as at yours, Draupadi, a fish target was fastened near the ceiling. But in my case, the fish was completely concealed on all sides, and only its reflection could be seen in a pot of water below. Several kings tried to hit the fish with an arrow, but they all failed. Then Arjuna made his attempt. Arjuna concentrated on the reflection of the fish in the water and took careful aim. But when Arjuna released his arrow, it only grazed the target. Then Sri Krishna fixed his arrow on the bow and shot it straight through the target, knocking it to the ground. I placed the victory necklace on Lord Krishna's neck, but the kings who had failed raised a violent protest. Lord Krishna valiantly fought them, cutting off the heads, arms, and legs of many and sending the rest fleeing for their lives. Then Krishna took me to Dwaraka for our lavish wedding. Finally, Rohini Devi, representing all the other 16,100 queens, explained that they were all daughters of kings who were defeated by Bauma Asura. The demon had held them captive, but when Lord Krishna killed this Naraka Asura, Krishna released them and married them all. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Chapter 84 is entitled The Sage's Teachings at Kurukshetra. This chapter describes three things: the arrival of great sages at Kurukshetra to observe the auspicious occasion of a solar eclipse. Number 2, the sages' glorification of Lord Krishna, and Vasudev's enthusiastic performance of sacrifices. On the occasion of a solar eclipse at Kurukshetra, exalted ladies like Kunti, Draupadi, and Subhadra got the chance to associate with Lord Krishna's queens. Seeing how much Krishna's consorts loved their husband, Kunti, Draupadi, Subhadra, and other exalted ladies were struck with wonder. As the women talked among themselves, and the men did likewise, great sages headed by Narada and Vyasadeva then arrived at Kurukshetra, desiring to see Lord Krishna. The various kings and other leading personalities who were sitting at their leisure, including the Pandavas, Krishna and Balaram, stood up as they saw the exalted sages. The leaders all bowed down to the great souls, inquired about their well-being, and worshiped the sages by offering them sitting places, water, and so on. Then Lord Krishna spoke. Now our lives are successful, for we have obtained the goal of life, namely, the audience of great sages and yoga masters, which even demigods only rarely obtained. The water at the holy place of pilgrimage and the deity forms of the demigods can purify one only after a long time, but saintly sages purify just by being seen. Those who identify themselves with their bodies and neglect to honor transcendental sages like you are no better than cows or asses. So after hearing Lord Krishna speak these words in the mood of a mere mortal human being, the sages remained silent for some time, as they had become bewildered. Then they spoke. "Oh, how amazing our Lord is! Krishna covers his true identity with his human-like activities and pretends to be subject to superior control other than himself. Surely, Krishna has spoken in this way only to enlighten the general populace. Such behavior of Krishna is indeed inconceivable." The sages continued to glorify Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the Super Soul, and as friend and worshipper of the Brahmanas. After the sages had praised him, Lord Krishna offered the sages his obeisances, and the sages begged Krishna's permission to return to their hermitages. But just then, Krishna's father Vasudeva came forward, bowing down to the sages, and he asked them, "Oh, what activities can one perform to be freed from the bondage of fruitive work?" The sages replied to Vasudeva, "By worshipping the Supreme Lord, Hari, through the performance of Vedic sacrifices, you will become free from the bondage of fruitive work." Vasudeva then requested the sages to act as his priests, and Vasudeva arranged for Vedic sacrifices to be performed with super excellent paraphernalia. Afterward, Vasudeva presented the priests with valuable gifts of cows and jewelry, and also with marriageable Brahmana girls. Vasudeva then performed the ritual bath, marking the end of the sacrifice, and fed everyone sumptuously, even the village dogs. Next, Vasudeva gave ample gifts to his relatives, the various kings and others, who all took Sri Krishna's leave and returned to their own homes. Unable to depart because of his intense affection for his relatives, Nanda Maharaj remained at Kurukshetra for 3 months, being served with reverence by the Yadavas. On one occasion, Vasudeva began to describe the deep friendship Nanda had shown him, shedding tears openly. At the end of 3 months, Nanda left for Mathura with the fond farewell of all the Yadavas. When the Yadavas finally saw that the rainy season was about to begin, the Yadavas returned to Dwaraka, where they related all that had happened at Kurukshetra to the residents of their capital. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So now we will go to the details. We just heard the chapter summaries. So now we will go to the details. So there is a total of 7, no, more than that. Let's see how many episodes we have. We have 16 episodes, which we will cover the next few weeks. So here's the first episode, entitled The Yadu Dynasty Goes to Kurukshetra for a Solar Eclipse. Once upon a time, while Lord Krishna and Balaram were living peacefully in their great city of Dwaraka, there was the rare occasion of a full solar eclipse. This takes place at the end of every kalpa, or day of Brahma. At the end of every kalpa, or day of Brahma, the sun is covered by a great cloud, and incessant rain covers the lower planetary systems up to Swargaloka, the heavenly planets. By astronomical calculation, people were informed about this great eclipse prior to its taking place, and therefore everyone, both men and women, decided to assemble at the holy place in Kurukshetra known as Samanta Panchaka. Srila Sanatana Goswami explains in his Vaishnava Toshini commentary that the events of this 82nd chapter occur after Lord Balaram's visit to Vraja, which was in chapter 65, and before Maharaj Yudhishthir's Rajasuya sacrifice, which we studied in chapter 74. Sanatana Goswami says that this must be so, since during the eclipse at Kurukshetra, all the Kurus, including Dhritarashtra, Yudhishthir, Bhishma, and Drona, met in friendship and happily shared the company of Sri Krishna. However, at the Rajasuya Yajna, Duryodhana's jealousy against the Pandavas became irrevocably inflamed. Soon after this, Duryodhana challenged Yudhishthir and his brothers to the gambling match, in which Duryodhana and Shakuni cheated the Pandavas of their kingdom, exiling them to the forest. Right after the Pandavas returned from exile, the great battle of Kurukshetra took place, during which Bhishma and Drona were ultimately killed. So it is not logically possible for the solar eclipse at Kurukshetra to have happened after the Rajasuya sacrifice. The holy pilgrimage site known as Samanta Panchaka is located at Kurukshetra, which is known as the sacred ground of the Kurus, where the Kuru king's predecessors performed many Vedic sacrifices. The Kurus were thus advised by learned Brahmanas that this would be the best place for them to observe vows during the solar eclipse. The Samanta Panchaka pilgrimage site is celebrated because Lord Parashuram performed great sacrifices at this place after having killed all the Kshatriyas in the world 21 times. Lord Parashuram killed all the Kshatriya kings, and their accumulated blood flowed like a stream. Lord Parashuram dug 5 big lakes at Samanta Panchaka, filling them with the blood of the slain Kshatriyas. We should know Lord Parashuram is Vishnu Tattva. As stated in the Isha Upanishad, Shuddham Apapa Vidham. God is antiseptic and prophylactic, meaning the Lord is always pure and uncontaminated. God is antiseptic in the sense that even any impure thing can become purified just by touching him. The word prophylactic refers to the power of God's association. The individual Atma or individual soul becomes polluted by sin, but God is never contaminated by sins. Thus, we will find in the Vedic literatures so many times that Krishna is compared to the all-powerful sun. The sun is never contaminated by anything infectious because it is all-powerful. On the contrary, infected things are sterilized by the rays of the sun. So similarly, the Lord is never contaminated by any sin. On the contrary, the sinful living entities become sterilized by contact with the Lord. As such, Vishnu Tattva cannot be contaminated by any sinful activity. Yet, although Lord Parashuram is fully powerful and uncontaminated, in order to exhibit ideal character, Parashuram performed great sacrifices at Samanta Panchaka in order to atone for his so-called sinful killing of the Kshatriyas. By his example, Lord Parashuram established that the killing art, although sometimes necessary, is not good. Lord Parashuram considered himself culpable for the sinful killing of the Kshatriyas. Therefore, how much more we are culpable for such abominable, unsanctioned acts. Thus, the killing of living entities is prohibited from time immemorial all over the world. Taking advantage of the occasion of the solar eclipse, all important persons visited the holy place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra. Some of the important personalities are mentioned as follows. Among the elderly persons there were Akrura, Vasudev, and Ugrasena. Among the younger generation, there were Gada, Pradyumna, Samba, and many other members of the Yadu dynasty who had come there with a view to atone for sinful activities accrued in the course of discharging their respective duties. Because almost all the members of the Yadu dynasty went to Kurukshetra, some important personalities like Aniruddha, the son of Pradyumna, and Kritavarma, the commander-in-chief of the Yadu dynasty, along with Suchandra, Shuka, and Sarana, remained in Dwaraka to protect the city. All the members of the Yadu dynasty were naturally very beautiful, and yet on this occasion, when they appeared duly decorated with gold necklaces and flower garlands, dressed in valuable clothing, and properly armed with their respective weapons, their natural beauty and personalities were 100 times enhanced. The members of the Yadu dynasty came to Kurukshetra in their gorgeously decorated chariots, resembling the airplanes of the demigods, pulled by big horses that moved like the waves of the ocean. And some of them rode on sturdy, stalwart elephants that moved like clouds in the sky. Their wives were carried on beautiful palanquins by beautiful men whose features resembled those of the Vidyadharas. The entire assembly looked as beautiful as an assembly of the demigods of heaven. After arriving in Kurukshetra, the members of the Yadu dynasty took their ceremonial baths. They did this with self-control as enjoined in the Shastras. And they observed fasting for the whole period of the eclipse in order to nullify the reactions of their sinful activities. Since it is a Vedic custom to give in charity as much as possible during the hours of the eclipse, the members of the Yadu dynasty distributed many hundreds of cows in charity to the Brahmanas. All those cows were fully decorated with nice dress and ornaments. The special feature of these cows was that they had golden ankle bells and flower garlands on their necks. All the members of the Yadu dynasty again took bath in the lakes created by Lord Parashuram. This second bath marked the end of their fasting, which was on the following day. After this, they sumptuously fed the Brahmanas with first-class cooked food, all prepared in butter. According to the Vedic system, there are two classes of food. One is called raw food, and the other is called cooked food. Now, raw food does not include raw vegetables and raw grains, but food boiled in water, whereas cooked food is made in ghee. Chapatis, dal, rice, and ordinary vegetables are called raw foods, as are fruits and salads. But puris, kachori, samosa, sweet balls, etc. are all called cooked foods. All the Brahmanas invited on that occasion by the members of the Yadu dynasty were fed sumptuously with cooked food. The ceremonial functions performed by the members of the Yadu dynasty externally resembled the ritualistic performance performed by karmis. When a karmi performs some ritualistic ceremony, his or her ambition is sense gratification, namely good position, good wife, good house, good children, or good wealth. But the ambition of the members of the Yadu dynasty was quite different. Their ambition was to offer perpetual faith and devotion to Krishna. All the members of the Yadu dynasty were great devotees. As such, after many births of accumulated pious activities, they were given the chance to associate with Lord Krishna. So in going to take bath in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, or in observing the regulative principles during the solar eclipse, or while feeding the Brahmanas, in all their activities, they simply thought of devotion to Krishna. Their ideal worshipful Lord was Krishna and no one else. After feeding the Brahmanas, it is the custom for the host, with their permission, to then accept prasadam. Thus, with the permission of the Brahmanas, all the members of the Yadu dynasty took their lunch. Then they selected resting places underneath big shadowy trees. And when they had taken sufficient rest, they prepared to receive visitors, among whom there were relatives and friends, as well as many subordinate kings and rulers. There were rulers from the Matsya province, from the Ushinara province, from the Koshala province, from the Vidarbha province, from the Kuru province, Srinjaya province, Kamboja province, Kekaya province, and many other countries and provinces. Some of the rulers belonged to opposing parties, and some were friends. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namaste Narasimhaya, Prahlad Aklada Dayane, Hiranya Kashi Purvaksha, Shilatankanakalaye, Ito Nrsinga Parato Nrsingo, Yato Yato Yamitato Nrsimha, Bahi Nrsimho, Hridaye Nrsimho, Nrsimham Ading Sharanang Prapadye, Tavakara Kamala Vare, Nakam Adbhuta Sringam, Dalita Hiranya Kashipo Tanu Bringam, Keshavadrita Narahadi Rupa, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Keshavadrita Nrsimha Rupa, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Jai Jagadisha, Jai Jagadisha, Jai Jagadisha Hare Hare, Jai Jagadisha Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.